What's up, everybody? I have put together a video based on how I bought my truck a couple weeks ago. A lot of people requested exactly how I went about it and how I did it. I got, honestly, a crazy deal on my truck and created the video, put it all in order for you guys, help you guys digest it. Hope you guys enjoy it. I think it'll be a very good, useful bit of you guys' time. Didn't necessarily have any specific models, brands, or trim levels or anything like that that I was looking at that I had to have or anything like that. Really what I was looking for was, certain financial factors that come into play when it comes to purchasing a car. So one big factor that kind of applies to everybody is what is going on in your local or regional market. There's certain factors at play in each individual market that might not apply to another. And so you want to make sure you're paying attention to those types of conditions and looking for specific things that we're going to talk about. But it's important for you to consider what is actually going on locally, because it's going to be different from market to market. Also, I don't want to necessarily sound like I'm specifically catering towards one way to purchase a car or another. There's three main ways to purchase a car, and there's different economic environments, different people's situations that are going to make them lean towards one or another. I'm not going to say that one is better than another, but I will say that the strategy I use will probably fit into a wider variety of people's situations. But there may be a situation here or there that might be better to lean one way or another. I'm also going to have Q&A afterwards to help answer questions that you guys may have. But the most important part for you guys is probably going to be doing the research. There is a tremendous amount of research that is involved with this. I spent maybe 40 hours, 45 hours, like actually researching a lot of this stuff. So it's going to be a lot of work. So first, there's three different ways to purchase a car. We got cash buyers, we got financers, and we got leasers. Let's talk about cash buyers first. Cash buying, a lot of people out there think that buying a car in cash is going to be the best way to go because you're saving on the interest that you'd pay if you're financing. I will challenge that idea every day of the week. There might be a situation here or there that it made sense to do, but for the vast majority of people, probably not. I would say that buying a depreciating asset with using a significant amount of cash or capital on a depreciating asset like a car would probably be a pretty bad idea when considering other places we can allocate money. There's a lot of people that kind of think that it's going to save you on the interest, but that's really only looking at one side of the math. Financing, that's the one that everybody kind of knows about, is pretty familiar with, because that's the route that majority of people go. And the third one is going to be leasing. That one is going to be the one that I would say is probably the least known about. Which one did I use? I used leasing. When it comes to leasing, there's a couple factors involved that are very, very important. I would say, I specifically looked for these inside of lease contracts. When you understand the contracts of leases, then it actually becomes a lot more attractive. Where there's a specific clause in a lease contract that you want to look for before even researching the car. Because if this factor isn't involved, then really the strategy that I'm talking about will not make sense. And the factor is pretty much the option to buy. So I'm not necessarily talking about leasing a car, because when everybody thinks about leasing, they're like, oh, you're renting. Well, yeah, for the first 3 years, but I actually have the right to buy the car for a specific price after the lease, and it's contractually fixed. So I already know in 3 years after my lease what I'm going to purchase my truck for. I can tell you exactly, $29,406. That option to buy the truck is really where the lease contract can give you a lot of the power. A concept pretty much of understanding the difference between a depreciating asset and an appreciating asset. When you understand cash flow, when you understand, opportunity cost, managing a budget, obviously not over leveraging yourself. Leasing becomes attractive because probably the best way to buy a car for most people is going to put as little as possible down and keep your monthly payment as low as possible as well. The depreciation of a car, everybody knows that as soon as you pull them off the lot, the depreciation of the car actually happens, the majority of it, when you pull it off the lot. So when you finance it or buy it in cash, you as the consumer are on the hook for that. When you're leasing, it's not you, it's actually on the bank. If a car is depreciating as soon as you pull it off the lot, and then let's say the company that like Nissan or Toyota that you go with, made some bad decisions on the behalf of their clients or customers, and their car values start dropping. Or let's just say market conditions of the market. It doesn't necessarily have to be a company decision, but the market drops. I don't necessarily have to be on the hook for that. If the car loses a ton of value, the company that you made a bunch of bad decisions and the car loses a bunch of value, you can actually just return it. But the comparables that I was looking at for my truck in 3 years, as long as the market continues doing what it's doing, stays where it's at, I will be able to buy a $35,000 truck for $29,400. That actually kind of works like a stock option. If anybody is familiar with the stock option and like, in stocks and investing, stock option works similar to that, where pretty much it gives you the right to purchase the car or purchase the stock, let's say, at a future date, specified date for a specific price. So in a way, a lease contract with the lease to buy option is kind of like a stock option, except with stock options, if you hold that stock option till maturity, you potentially may have to purchase or sell the stock for a loss. Now, lease contracts are not necessarily like that, where they have the ability to return the car for a fee. You have the loss protection. If the car does lose value, I can just turn it in, go to zero down on my next car, and take my odds on the next. There's a few specific places that I did my research for purchasing a car. Edmunds is a really good website that actually gives you accurate information. It'll be a very good resource for information based on like financial factors like your interest rate, your residual values. Another one is the actual dealership that you're planning on visiting. You want to know exactly what's on their lot, verify it, make sure it's the exact trim level that you're comparing on Edmunds. And then another place is actually the manufacturer's websites. They'll have specific incentives that they give out, and you want to make sure you're verifying all that information with the dealership. And all three of them are going to work together. Before we get into it, I'm going to kind of teach you guys a little bit about the terms and definitions that I'm looking at to make my decision. Number one, the first one isn't necessarily a financial factor, but it's actually a contractual factor, meaning, this is actually what gives you the right to purchase the vehicle after the lease for the fixed residual value. That's 100% the most important thing. If this thing isn't in place, then the whole strategy is kind of like pointless. MSRP, that is a manufacturer suggested retail price. It's pretty much a part of the equation to help us determine what the residual value is that we wanted to purchase for at the end of the lease. It's also without any discounts. So that's pretty much what the manufacturer is suggesting the dealerships sell it for. Sales price, that is pretty much the price you agree to purchase the car for after all discounts. The residual value percentage, that's the manufacturer's predicted depreciation schedule. Higher trim, sometimes it actually means you get a higher percentage. So potentially it's a little difference in the monthly payment for the car. And then the money factor is pretty much your interest rate when it comes to leasing. Now it's also called a lease fee because they can't legally call it an interest rate. Incentives, that's just discounts. So that's kind of what we've been talking about the whole time. Discounts can make a huge difference. So taxes are also a big factor. So these can make a huge difference depending on where you are and how you're taxed. Leases are taxed very differently than financing or paying cash in most states. So make sure you verify 100%. Recommend you verify your location because this can throw off your numbers. One thing that's unique to business owners is the ability to deduct 100% of the vehicle depending on the usage. So that's pretty much the only way anybody can actually depreciate 100% of the vehicle in year one and beyond. Other ways of traditional, depreciation schedules for vehicles, I think the most you can get is 80% year one, and that's on like a 6,000-pound vehicle. Incentives are going to be a big one. Like incentives are what actual manufacturers or even dealerships can do their own incentives, or what they do to actually move units of vehicles that aren't moving or need to be moved for new models coming in. And so like it's important to know those kind of things when they're happening and what they are, and verify between them. For my car, I had a tremendous amount of incentives that were on my vehicle. The reason the Nissan Frontiers, the 2024s were starting to be replaced with the 2025s. The 2025s just started hitting the lots. If you understand how dealers purchase cars, they don't actually pay cash for them. They finance them. So they're paying interest rates on the cars that they actually have on the lot. It's called dealer lot fees. Yeah. So they pretty much, will start moving cars themselves and offering their own incentives. The dealership that I worked with had their own incentives on them because the 2025s were currently on the lot. They had a bunch of 2024s that they needed to get rid of. Gave me a lot of negotiating power. There was also the manufacturer incentives, and those were offering like cash rebates. So I didn't actually put money down out of my own pocket, but the manufacturer actually did for me. On top of incentives, knowing your numbers is just going to give you confidence when you're going in there and negotiating. Negotiating is one of the hardest parts for most people. I can't recommend enough for you to just do your research and know your numbers honestly better than they do. When I went into the dealership, I knew the numbers behind them, behind all the math, better than the sales manager did, and so they didn't really mess with me. I kind of found it fun, to be honest, and I think you will too, as long as you're actually in a position to where you're in a good negotiating position. Now, you do want to be careful with incentives. Incentives can be counterintuitive. So, like Toyota, for example, Toyota never really does incentives, and that is actually one of the reasons why I think their cars hold so much value. Very rarely do you have incentives with Toyota, and if you do, it's on like lower end models. You won't get it on like the Tacoma, the 4Runner, and all the Rav4. It's just super hard to get incentives on those. I want to break down the math behind your guys' monthly lease payments and how it kind of breaks down, because when you understand this, it starts to make a lot more sense. MSRP of my truck, we take those two, put them into this equation. So we take 44,555 times 0.66 equals 29,400. Apologize for my handwriting, but that is our residual value. So that's how you determine your residual value, always used with MSRP. It's not the selling price. Your money factor is determined by taking the decimal that they provide you. They always provide you a decimal. Easy way to just do the math. So you take that decimal, you times it by 2,400, and that gives you your interest rate or your lease fee, whatever you want to call it. So that was my money factor, 0.00105 times 2,400 equals 2.52. Incentives. So that's the amount of incentives I got off on my car, and it was $6,000 off of MSRP. So my sales price was actually $38,555 on a 45,000, nearly a $45,000 car. The total cost of my depreciation is you would take the sales price minus the residual value equals 9,100. That'd be my total cost of depreciation over the 36-month lease. The monthly cost of depreciation would be just divided by 36 months, so 254, without including taxes or fees again. But so this is the discount I got, and then this is pretty much as if you were just to pay MSRP price. So the sales price, 44.5, and then 38.5. Your residual value is the same for each car because it's the same exact car. Depreciation is the exact same. Total depreciation that you pay for out of your own pocket on the no discounts is 15,155. On the other one we just did the math for, it's 9,100. Your monthly cost total on no discounts, it's 421. With discounts, it's 254. So 6,000 MSRP off of MSRP on a $44,500 car cut your payment down on the lease nearly in half. But the thing is you both still have the same residual value. So you can both still purchase the car for 29,400 at the end of the lease. So in Edmunds.com, this is a really good place for you guys to do research on pretty much anything. If you're trying to buy a car cash, buy a car with finance, or even lease a car, it's like the best place to do it. It's going to give you the most accurate data up to date from what I've found. This is my truck. Pulls up the predicted MSRP, but you're going to want to verify, match yours in here. Also, it does give you the VIN number. In case if the dealership that you're looking at actually gives that information, Edmunds, some don't, some do. The dealership, their trims and what they got listed on their website, and just pair it up with this. If there's any incentives, acquisition fee, that's accurate. That's from the manufacturer itself. So there's no really negotiating on this. And then the dealership has a specific, they call them doc fee, dealer fees. Make sure you get your dealer's fee in there to be as accurate as possible. Brings up the money factor rate as well, what your money factor is on this specific car. One of the big things about here is that you're going to want to make sure you calculate your taxes accurately, because I've noticed that Edmunds does not actually accurately taxes for you. So as I've said before, you got to look up your state, and honestly, the best thing to do them is yourself and then plug them in here. But make sure you're accurate. And then there is my deal. So it has a little cool thing right here. It's like a deal ranker. If you're in a good, fair, high, or great, and it's pretty much as far as over here as it possibly gets. But it's a good thing to just go in here and monthly lease calculator and just play around with different cars. For example, let's go look at a Toyota. So I do want to show this to people, just because there's going to be people that probably think that it probably would have been better to start with financing to begin with, and I agree to disagree. There's some scenarios where it might be make more sense, but for most, I don't really think so. And then let's turn around and let's finance this thing. But let's say we don't get a good as interest rate. We get 4% with zero down. We at a 4% interest, we are paying $600 a month. Still cheaper than if we put zero down in the other one. Over this contract with you guys right quick. Just we're using this contract kind of to our advantage the way it's written. There's certain types of protections that this lease gives you that those two don't, but there also is other types of restrictions that those two don't have as well. You can look at it here. It's my Nissan Frontier 2024, 2,500 due at signing. That is not true. Just I did not have to put anything down at signing. And honestly, I recommend you never do when it comes to leasing. The only time you potentially should is if your state is reaming you to death with taxes. Nissan put 1,000 down for me as a cash incentive, and then $925 for a trade. So I put about 1,900 down monthly payment. Total monthly payments, 12,953. It's your disposition charge. So this means if we do not purchase the vehicle, they charge me a $395 fee, which the only reason I'm not going to purchase it is because it's negative equity. Realistically, at the end of the day, if my car is negative equity, I can just take it back to the dealership, pay the fee, wipe my hands. I'm not on the hook for any of the negative equity, and I don't have to roll any negative equity around. If I am negative equity, I'll turn it in. I'll go put zero down on my next one and take my odds, and that's $1,000 or for your total payments, the down payment that they put down for me and the trade in. Nothing out of pocket, zero out of pocket. Here is your gross capitalized cost. Pretty much means your out the door cost. So when you're talking about finance buying or cash buying, so the capitalization cost, that is after fees and everything. This is just the cost for the car itself. Capitalized cost reduction, that's the down payment. Adjusted capitalized cost, that is $38,486. That's pretty much that is my true out the door cost. So that is what I paid for the car. Residual value is $29,406. What I'm going to be able to purchase this truck for $29,406. The same truck is going for 36 right now. 3-year-old truck with 32. Realistically, I might have more equity than that. This 9,080, that is your depreciation cost. The next piece down below it is your rent charge. So that's pretty much your interest. This is your total base monthly payment. So that's what you're pretty much just paying for the car and interest or car and rent fee, 11,646 over 3 years. Now that's what that breaks down to, 323. Taxes are calculated differently on leases. Your sales tax rate in your local zip code on your monthly lease payment. Local sales tax rate times it by the lease payment. That's what it comes up with, $36.30 for a $45,000 truck. Here is an important piece. You have a couple of key items in here, your early termination, wear and use. That's pretty much if you go over your mileage. So I picked a 10,000 mile lease. You can do a 12,000, you can do a 15,000. I've seen 30,000 mile leases depending on the brand and manufacturer, but I recommend you pick something that's actually close to what you realistically drive. The people that might have trouble are the people that drive a shit ton. And that's kind of a valid concern if you drive really that much. For the vast majority of people, you should be able to fit into the 15K lease, I'd imagine. And realistically, that's going to give you your depreciation schedule. The lower the mileage, the less the depreciation. If I do end up going over my mileage, return the car, then it does. If I go over my mileage and I buy the car, it doesn't matter. So there is a 25-cent fee for every mile that you drive over. 1,000 miles, 250, 2,500, 3,750. Bots, this purchase option, this is the most important part of the whole contract. This is what gives you the ability to actually purchase the car after the lease, after the term. It's determined by the residual value that I already know. So I know what I'm paying for that car. Now, interest rates could be different. There's a couple of things that could be different, taxes and shit like that. But if my interest rate doubles, then it's only gonna be like 40, 60 bucks more a month. So there's a lot of different factors that I wasn't necessarily able to cover. We can kind of talk about those more in the future. Obviously, when it comes to the tax situation, there's some advantages to leasing that don't apply to financing or cash, depending on what type of business you are. Also too, when it comes to buying a car, I really do think the vast majority of people should look towards putting as little as possible down and keeping your monthly payment as low as possible. That way we can actually spend those resources or allocate those resources towards other goals like investing and saving for retirement. Because when you actually consider that side of the math, rather than just saving the interest when you're paying cash or when you own the car when you're financing, when we're considering all those different factors, I do think that the vast majority of people should consider leasing. But I want to know what you guys think. Let's kind of start a little bit of a Q&A. If you guys have any questions or anything you guys wanted me to cover more in detail, then I'll be glad to. But if you guys disagree with me, then let's hear it. I would like to open up a conversation and maybe hear your thoughts out. And ultimately, I checked the math in which directions, so I'm pretty confident myself. But if you guys disagree with me, let me know. I wanted to make it more of an open conversation. If you guys found some value in this, or if you guys wanted to learn more, let's talk about it.